Republicans and Democrats failed to meet their first big deadline. Congress and the president were hoping for meaningful agreement on the deficit plan before global markets open today. That means both sides have a lot of work to do in this week. Alison Fraser is the director of the Thomas A. Rowe Institute for Economic Policy Studies at the conservative-leaning Heritage Foundation. She joins us now from Washington. Alison, thanks for spending some time with us today. Let me ask you, first of all, about your take on what happens if we don't get a package by August 2nd. Is it the end of the world, or is a default, maybe even a technical default, something we could live through?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that the markets are really dealing with today. If they don't reach the August 2nd deadline, I don't think it's the end of the world automatically and immediately. There's still going to be an adequate or a significant flow of tax money coming into the Treasury on a daily basis. So the real question is, what bills is Treasury Secretary Geithner not going to pay in order to avoid a default on the debt? And you can bet your bottom dollar that they are figuring that out right now. On August 3rd, of course, the real difficulty is that you have a big batch of Social Security checks that have to go out in the mail.
The reason I ask you is because you at the Heritage Foundation led recommendations for bankruptcy recovery following Hurricane Katrina, preparing their special reports, I should say, on disaster recovery. So you're an expert in this area. Do you think we need to deal with that, though, Alison, or do you think that we will find a solution before we get that far?
I do think that we'll find a solution before we get that far. I certainly think that members of the House and members in the Senate understand what the situation is, and I think they're working really seriously at it. But what you really see is a disagreement, a fundamental disagreement about where the country is going to go. In the Senate and in the White House, you want bigger government, bigger regulation, higher taxes, and less capitalism. And in the House of Representatives, they want limited government, lower taxes, and a vital and robust system of free enterprise. And this is really what it's getting down to. This is why there was the breakdown over bigger taxes. Is
there, though, any other choice than a short-term solution for now? Because it doesn't seem that anyone's laid out real specific legislation on this.
Well, don't forget that the House did pass real specific legislation that had very strong enforceable spending caps over the next 10 years. So there was something on the table. Senate didn't even take it up. So moving forward, it could well be that the real step that happens this week is an intermediate or shorter term kind of spending cut. And let's look, if you look back at the last 20 years, there have been about 44 different increases in the debt ceiling. So obviously, doing the math, over 3/4 of them were not long-term that the president is calling for. So short-term, it's not the end of the deal. What is fundamentally important, though, is that Congress work quickly to get the long-term under control. This is obviously the warnings that we've had from both Moody's and Standard & Poor's, and it really is the problem. And I would say they've got to tackle entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If they take those off the table, there's no way that we can really tackle our long-term spending problem.
I got to ask, Alison, because you're coming sort of from the right here, why couldn't John Boehner just swallow the $1.2 trillion in extra tax revenue that the president wanted them to? I mean, we're talking about a 10-year period, so it becomes a much smaller number when you look at it like that. Couldn't we handle that with getting rid of some deductions, getting rid of some loopholes?
Yeah, well, look, okay, what was the last unemployment rate? 9.2%. I think that taxes, personally, my opinion is that taxes are the wrong solution. It is a spending problem and a spending problem only. And the whole point of doing tax reform is to broaden the base, lower the rates, and do it in a revenue-neutral fashion. If they don't tackle spending, what will happen is they will always have to come back and perpetually be increasing taxes. I think it's the wrong solution in the long term, and it's absolutely the wrong solution today. We need a growth agenda through strong revenue-neutral tax reform, and I agree with the Speaker on that.
All right, Alison, thanks so much for joining us. Alison Fraser, their director at the Heritage Foundation, joining us from Washington, D.C.